This is Rogers TV.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Alethia. I am your host, Alethia O'Hara-Stephenson. In this show, we have conversations with amazing individuals who are doing incredible things in our community, inspiring things. The show will educate, it will empower, and it will inspire you. Today, I am honored to have in the studio with me the current mayor of the Township of Melancton. He's also 3-time serving as warden for Dufferin County. He's also an amazing family man, a real down-to-earth gentleman. Please help me welcome Darren White to the program. Welcome, Mayor White.
Thanks, Alethia. Great to be here. I'm honored. When you were doing the introduction, I was wondering who you were talking about there for a second. But.
The one and only. Welcome to the show. So it's my honor to have you here. And, you know, I've watched you do some amazing things over the past few years. But before we even touch on politics, let's get to know Darren. Like, who is the real Darren?
Well, that's, when people ask me that question, I never know how to answer it. I mean, really, I'm an East Coast guy who moved to Ontario. I'm a family man. I'm a stepdad of 3 kids, nice. All adults now. I'm a grandfather of 5 little kids, which I think is my favorite job. I lived in the community about 20 years. Mm-hmm. I'm a carpenter and woodworker. I'm a politician. I'm a member of the Canadian Forces Reserves. I'm a whole bunch of different things, and I mean, there's a little bit of a lot of things is who Darren is.
Sounds like Darren is also very busy.
I have been known to be that, yeah. That's
good. Busy keeps you out of trouble, I've heard. One of the things that, you know, I'd love to touch on, you mentioned that you're from the East Coast. Mm-hmm. What made you decide to leave Newfoundland and venture into Toronto? Sure.
Well, I mean, when I was, where I lived was a town called Labrador City. It's up in Labrador in the northern part of Newfoundland and Labrador. Mm-hmm. It's an iron ore mining town. And in the 80s, when I left, ultimately ended up leaving late 80s, it was, the iron ore market was going up and down and all over the place. So there was always worries about losing your job for my parents, my dad, and many of my relatives and friends. And I didn't want that for my life. I wanted something different. Right. I thought, I did what a lot of people from Newfoundland do. They moved to Toronto or they moved to Alberta. I chose Toronto. Okay. I wanted to live in the big city. Our town was very isolated and very small, and I came down here because I just wanted a change. I wanted more opportunity, mm-hmm. and yeah, that's basically why I came.
Perfect. What was the transition like moving from a small town to Toronto?
Very different. Yeah. It was. I mean, literally. I tell people the best way to describe it is when you watch TV and you see a movie advertised, mm-hmm. and it says starts Friday at a theater near you. In my hometown, we used to try to add 6 months or 8 months to that time frame to get it to the one theater we had. But when I moved to Ontario, one of the biggest things for me was it actually started Friday at a theater near me. Wow. You know, just a complete culture shock from up north in northern Canada, where you get 6 and 7 feet of snow in the winter, mm-hmm. to Ontario, where in January in Toronto sometimes there's no snow. So it was a very complete opposite of what I was used to.
Okay, interesting. Mm-hmm. Did you get a chance to enter the mining business in Newfoundland before you transitioned to Toronto?
No, I did not want to be a miner. Okay. I had no interest in being a miner at all. I wanted to, I was a DJ in high school. I played parties and dances and that kind of thing. And I wanted to be a DJ. That's what I sort of, the road I wanted to go down when I came to Ontario. And I did that for a long time in Toronto. I played weddings and bars and some nightclubs in Toronto. And I spent a lot of time doing that. Transitioned into hospitality management. and ended up going back to school and getting a diploma in hospitality management, specialized business. And then sort of fell into construction. I've always been good building things and making things, and that's sort of where I felt the most comfortable, really. And so I spent a lot of years doing construction, home renovations, building custom woodworking, that kind of thing. And I still do that today.
I love that, but you've piqued my interest with DJing, so I'm going to pick on you a little bit more with that.
Sure.
So DJing, you touched on weddings, and what else other events did you get a chance to
I did a lot of like private parties and weddings, and but most of it, I spent most of my time doing nightclub work. If you're familiar with the Copa in Toronto.
Yes.
Yeah, I DJ'd there for a while. I DJ'd at the Spectrum as well for a while. And a lot of smaller places like some O'Toole's and those kind of 300, 400 seater venues. So I did that for a whole lot of years, and then I ended up, and I don't tell a lot of people this, so you'll feel consider honored. I ended up hosting a karaoke show when karaoke was the big thing back in the early 2000s. So so I've done a few different things.
Wow, the depth to Darren White, it's incredible. So you touched on karaoke. Do you sing?
I did.
Okay.
I sing in the shower now a lot.
Oh, that's fair. I think most people do that now.
And when nobody's around. But I have been known to get up on stage and sing a few times.
Oh, okay. I promise I won't dare you to get up on stage.
Great.
Good stuff. So you touched on the fact that you entered into the hospitality business. Can you just touch on what was that transition like?
Well, it was a natural transition from DJing. I mean, every young guy who likes music wants to be a DJ, but at some point it's time to grow up. It is, And I thought the next transition would be to restaurant and bar management, hotel work, and things like that. So it was a natural transition because you already know a lot of those jobs, and you've already been part of how a restaurant or a bar works. So it was a natural transition. But I've never been one to sit behind a desk really. And so I, as much as I like to be in management, I'm not really good at sitting there and the paperwork aspect of it. I've never been good with that.
Okay, interesting. And so from Toronto, you made the transition to the township of Melanchthon in, was it 2010?
A little bit earlier than that. I'm just about 2005, I think. We moved from, we left Toronto when I met my wife, and we moved to Brampton briefly. We moved to Orangeville very briefly, and then we ended up in Melanchthon where we are now. We've been there about 15 years. Okay,
interesting. It's interesting though how you started off in Newfoundland, moved to the big city, and now you're back in.
The town I live in now is smaller than the one I lived in Labrador.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. What a journey. So why did you decide to leave Toronto?
Just, it was time for a change. We were raising 3 little kids. It's not the greatest place to raise children in Toronto. I mean, some people thrive in that environment. I wanted more. I wanted to be able to do a lot of sports and things with the kids. And we moved to, like I said, Brampton and then Orangeville. But we really thrived as a family, I think, when we moved out into the country. And I dialed back my work schedule. I was working so many hours a week in order to pay the bills and the property taxes and everything else in a town like Orangeville or in Toronto. And I managed to make things slow down a little bit when we moved to Melanchthon. So I had more time with the kids, which worked out really well. And it made us a stronger family, I think.
Nice. And that's a common theme that I've heard with a lot of residents who have moved, made a transition from the big city to whether it's Shelburne, even Orangeville. It's a change of pace, right? And it allows people to slow down and kind of connect more with the family. So I like that. Yeah. And so your children were able to thrive and, survive and go to school here and, do all of those great things?
Yep. Okay. And they're all adults now, so managed to get through it successfully, and now they all have kids of their own.
Okay, love it. And are they still fairly in the area?
Everybody's pretty close. Yeah,
love it.
Everybody's within about 45 minutes.
Okay, nice. Now, we're going to touch on politics a little bit. So in 2010, there was a vacancy in the township of Melanchthon. Before we even ask, what inspired you to throw your name in the hat? Did you have aspirations prior to that of being a politician?
Yes and no. I always thought I could do a better job than most politicians, and I was always very opinionated, but not really. In about 2009, I hurt my back at work really badly, and I was off work. I ended up going back to school, studying environmental science, and there was a vacancy, as you say, came up in Melanchthon at their council, and I was in school with a bunch of, I was in my 40s at the time, and I was in school with a bunch of 20-year-olds. And I used to have these debates with my environmental law professor, Ruth Yoel. And we used to go back and forth to the amusement of the 20-year-olds in class. And when this position came available, she challenged me she said, it's time for you to put up or shut up. So I put up, and I mean, I was successful in gaining that position. And I mean, here we are 11 years later, I'm still doing it.
I love that. Never too old and never too young to do something different, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, anybody who wants to better themselves, to go back to school, if you have the opportunity, anybody can do it.
Absolutely, I love that. And, you know, I'm seeing a lot of that with some of our leaders in the community, you know, being bold and going back to school. And, you know, it doesn't matter what age you are.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And what a great message for your family. I imagine they took inspiration from that as well, you know, seeing dad and maybe grandpa at the time, you know, pursuing, you know, further education, and above and beyond that, even getting uncomfortable and entering politics, something that was foreign for you.
I hope so. I hope they've learned a little bit about it. I hope the people around me have learned a little bit about challenging yourself as well.
Yes, incredible. Now, you know, from a leadership perspective, you know, you've tackled some really transformative changes throughout your tenure as warden of Dufferin County and even as mayor. But are there any leaders, whether a celebrity or even closer to home in the family, that you take inspiration from?
Well, we're lucky in this, and I think you said it in the introduction. We have a lot of great leaders, great community organizers in our community, and I think you're one of them, actually.
Thank you.
And people like Lisa Post, people like Wade Mills and Shelburne, like some of these, Steve Anderson as well. Some people who are not afraid to roll up their sleeves and get into the trenches and try to make positive change.
Right.
And, you know, as for people outside, I don't really subscribe to idolizing too many of the political leaders at province or federally, because I think it's not relatable in many ways to many people. But I mean, all you have to do is look back into your past. Everybody has what they would call a leader or a mentor in them. And Ruth Yoel, my environmental law professor, is one of the ones for me. You know, she really pushed people to step out of their comfort zone. My dad as well, hardworking guy, man of few words, but a hardworking guy. And I saw him get up and go to work every day, and come home at the end of every day and then get up and do it again, you know, rinse and repeat, so to speak. And, you know, but he was a miner. He was an electrician in the mine, but it doesn't mean he wasn't a leader or a mentor, because you learn that lesson of how important, you know, your job is, and taking pride in what you do and making sure it's done right.
I love that. That's incredible that you're able to take some inspiration and, you know, and guidance and leadership from your father, you know, someone who's right there in your home, inspiring you every step of the way. That's incredible. We're going to go to a short break, and so we will be right back, and we're going to talk about the heart of a leader when we return with Mayor Darren White. See you soon.
Hey, I'm Chef Corey Dern, host of a show on Rogers TV Georgina called Cooking with Corey. Join me bi-weekly for brand new episodes where I teach you not only what to cook, but how to cook. On this show, we have cooked almost everything. Things like Japanese udon noodles with tofu, chicken on the rocks, zucchini fritters, and even grilled cheese. There's only one thing missing, and that's smell-o-vision. That's Cooking with Corey, right here on Rogers TV Georgina.
Welcome back to In Conversation with Alethia. I am in the studio with Mayor for the Township of Melanchthon, Mayor Darren White. Welcome back. So we left off about, talking about the heart of a leader. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, leadership through the pandemic.
Sure.
Everyone has had to essentially, roll up their sleeves, buckle up, and do what was necessary to protect our community. What was it like leading through the pandemic?
In the beginning, it was scary, to be totally honest with you. I don't know that anybody in my position has ever been faced with something like this since, perhaps the Second World War or World War One. I mean, in the early days, so much was unknown, and we were just trying to do the best we could do. It was easier for me than maybe some of my colleagues because I had fantastic team around me who really knew what they were doing, and I knew that if I stumbled, people were there behind me to pick up the pieces. But at the same time, I mean, I had to have conversations that I never thought I'd be talking about. Right. Things like, do we convert an arena to a morgue? Do we buy refrigerated trucks? How many body bags should we order? I never thought I'd ever, in my wildest dreams, be part of those conversations. But a lot of it is because we didn't know so much, and that's what we saw happening in other places. So it was very challenging, very scary, but also very rewarding, because I think our communities in Dufferin County came out of it really strong. And while so many things happened over the past 18 or 20 months, I think we're better for it almost. And I'm really proud of what we did.
And you should be. We're seeing the effects of that leadership and what everyone else has done around you. Businesses continue to thrive, and from a health perspective, despite some of the challenges with mental health, people are still thriving and getting out and about and doing things as best as possible. So kudos to the team for being able to support you through that. What are some of the lessons learned from leading throughout this pandemic?
Well,
I'm sure there are plenty, but
I used to be a Boy Scout, and the lesson I learned as a Boy Scout is the same lesson we learned through the pandemic. Really, it's be prepared. Which I think we are. Be resilient, be flexible,
right.
Be adaptable, and depend. Know who you can count on. And I think we've nailed that stuff really well in our county and in our municipalities.
Right. And I like that too. You touched on the fact that you had a team around you. It wasn't just Darren. It wasn't I. You had a great support system around you. But from an individual perspective, at the end of the day, you had to leave some of these very tough conversations. Whether to invest in refrigeration, trucks. How were you able to now go back home and leave all of those heavy topics and just focus on taking care of you, focus on taking care of your family?
To be honest, I don't know that I ever will be, ever past some of those discussions and some of the worries from the early days. I think it's, people ask me about it and I say it's my cross to bear. It's what happened. It's something that happened to me, and I'll carry it with me the rest of my life. There was losses in Dufferin County, particularly in Shelburne. We lost a number of people in one of the private homes, but we lost a couple of people in our county home as well. And as much as I'm not directly hands-on in that operation, I mean, I consider we lost those people on my watch, and I don't know that I'll ever get by it or past it, really. But at the same time, I've accepted it, and I've accepted that, bad things happen sometimes, and we have to just find a way to persevere and get past it. And I mean, it's been a challenge, but luckily we're coming out the other end.
Yes.
And now it's time for us to start supporting each other, regardless of who we are, to try to get back to some kind of, I don't like to use the word normal, really, because I don't think we'll ever see what was normal 2 years ago, but normalize our society once again.
Right, right. And, you know, it's unfortunate and, you know, very heartbreaking and sad, but there are some lessons learned, you know, from this, you know, how to be, it's hard to say resilient, but we were forced to be resilient.
Yep.
You know, from a leadership perspective, again, being adaptable and learning how to pivot, because you've had to do that a number of times, you know, as information was coming into you. I don't want to, you know, sit on such a sad topic for much longer, but, you know, I want to pivot slightly to talk about some of the other initiatives that you've been able to be part of, such as, you know, something that is near and dear to my heart, which is Black History Month, right? What was that feeling like to be able to be the guy, to be able to have Black History Month recognized for the very first time?
Well, it was fantastic. I mean, when we do things like that, I often wonder, why didn't we do this sooner? But it takes leadership, and leadership from you and folks like you to sort of push us out of our comfort zone a little bit to take those things on. So the Black History Month piece is fantastic, and I'm glad now that that's going to be an annual thing, and it's going to be, it's now going to be commonplace. But I think we all know that there's still so much work to do on the diversity and the equity piece. But the county is doing it. We're trying to be the example, not the exception. We're trying to move in a direction where we can help people to learn why diversity is important and why equity is important.
Yes.
And you know, I think as much as I'd like to take credit for those things, I'm only a small part of it. And I mean, I have an amazing team around me, and we just hired a new. Through the pandemic, we've transformed the entire operation of the county. We've gone from a big, sprawling municipal government style operation to a very condensed, a lot of people working at home and that kind of thing.
Right.
And we've changed, one of the things we've changed recently is our Human Resources Department. It's now called the Department of People and Equity.
Okay.
Right? It's not Human Resources anymore. And we've brought in a Director of People and Equity, who will be starting in a couple of weeks, and I'm so excited.
Exciting.
And if you haven't, I don't know if you've met him yet, he's an amazing gentleman. He's got tons of experience in Peel and down in Brampton, different things. Fantastic guy. I had the pleasure of chatting with him for about an hour the other day. And I can't wait to see the next step in our evolution in the diversity piece. So things like that are happening with the backdrop of this terrible pandemic.
Right, yeah.
You know, and I think while we would have done it, I don't know that we would have done it as quickly or as efficiently, and that's part of why I think I have such a great team behind me, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for tomorrow and the day after.
Awesome, I love that. And yes, you know, with the pandemic, you know, I think collectively we've all been able to accomplish a great deal of things, you know, whether it should be recognizing equity issues, Black History Month, the Shelburne Multicultural event, again, another milestone recognition in Dufferin County. So all amazing things. Now, as a leader, you know, what was your biggest lesson? If you could just sum up everything, your entire career, your biggest lesson?
You can't fix everything.
I love that.
You can't fix everything. As much as you'd like to, you can't fix everything. But the thing I learned, I think, the most of, because when I started in politics, you always think, when you look at yourself as a leader, you think of yourself as a leader, you always think you're in charge.
Yes.
Just go and do it. The biggest transformation for me, I think, has been that I really understand, and I really believe I'm the smallest part of it. If I didn't have the people behind me, I would be a totally ineffective leader. But I have a great team, and I have a great people who you know, they make me look good, and that's why when I speak so often, I speak about my team, because really it's them. I'm just the guy at the front. But so I've learned that lesson as well. I've learned probably the most important thing to do as a leader, an effective leader, is to surround yourself with people who not only are smart and brilliant in their field, but who are going to challenge you when you're wrong and tell you when you're wrong. And I have a few of those as well, and which is really good.
Okay, that's awesome. I love that. it's great to have people who will stand up and challenge you, and it makes you stronger. You know, it makes everyone grow together. So I absolutely love that. When you have to look at now balancing, you know, the needs of the township of Melanchthon versus the county, you know, how do you find that? How do you find that balance?
Well, it's sometimes it's tricky because there sometimes are competing interests, even within the same issue. But at the same time, you know, one of the things, when I started in politics, I was very much Melanchthon, we're the center of the universe. And you talk to a lot of brand new politicians, they'll say the same thing, their municipality, center of the universe. But over the last decade, particularly the last 6 years, I've really come to understand and embrace a bigger picture type of thing. I mean, our economies are so intertwined now. While maintaining our character in Melanchthon is important, it's also important, we're not going to be successful if we're not working together as Dufferin. And even bigger than that in many aspects. With my work with the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, you know, we talk about economies in a regional perspective rather than a county perspective or a lower tier municipality perspective. And that's how we're going to have to operate in order to succeed. Because right now we're talking about competing with countries like China and Saudi Arabia and Russia, and those are the countries we're competing with. So it can't any longer be Melanchthon is competing with Amaranth or Shelburne is competing with Orangeville. We have to be working together to build ourselves up regionally. And while borders are important, they're not the be-all and end-all. And we have to stop concentrating strictly on this is my side of the road and that's your side of the road. And, you know, the rules are different. We have to start localizing those things.
Okay, I like that, and you know, I like how you were able to just compartmentalize everything, and you know, painting that broader picture for us as well. You know, comparison between Saudi Arabia and, you know, the needs of Melanchthon. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, you know, because we're coming towards the end of the show, but I want to touch on something that you talked about earlier, carpentry, or, you know, construction. What type of construction do you normally do?
I do home renovations and that kind of thing. I'm not a giant company by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, I've done some accessibility work for people with challenges. General home renovations. You know, I can build you a house or I can fix your sink. So I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none, I guess is the way to describe it. But where I really like to be is in my garage with some wood and some tools, just building something.
Perfect. I love it. So now we know the heart of a leader, the heart of Darren White. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of In Conversation with Alethia. Tune in next time for another amazing episode. We will have amazing guests coming in and sharing their conversations with me. So stay tuned and see you next time. See you soon.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.